Okay, so I'm trying to come up with an idea for a monogram with an A and a P. So an A and a P. In script, you can make an A like this, or an A like this. You can make a P like this, or like this. There's lots of different options in my little tiny brain right now. But what's in my brain right now is this one. It goes up, up, down, over, down. There's an A and a P. Kind of neat. Let's make it even more symmetrical, sort of. So we'll have these two vertical lines. Here I'm making the A look like this, right? And the P looks like this. So we combine them so this line goes into that line. So we could do it where these two vertical lines are slightly bowed. This one comes up, comes down, goes over, hits that, comes down. That's kind of neat. Maybe. Let's try something else. Let's stick with that idea. So we have two vertical lines. Let's pretend it's a Victorian Gothic sort of monogram. So you'd have, they're usually the tails of or the bases of the letters are sort of fun. They can sort of look like fleur-de-lis or upside down fleur-de-lis. They come up here. This comes down here like that. Let's say this one comes, maybe follows that same look, except has shaped like a P. Does that look too much like a shovel or something? How about this, where we have the A and the P overlapping like this? That's kind of neat. And then you can actually make them overlap where you see, let's say it's a, how do I make this work? Let's say it's a skeletal thing. So how do you make them look like they are intertwined? Well, I'll show you. So here, let's say this part of the P, the vertical stroke of the P goes in front of the A. So then it goes behind the A here, and then in front of the A again over here. So here the P is behind the A and in front of the A at the same time. So they're interwoven. Oops. So anyway, I'm trying to come up with an idea of maybe doing a sort of a floral A and a P. So let's see how we do this. So let's see. My cat is, no, stop. My cat is playing with my iPad, pressing buttons and turning things on. So let's say that this is our A, and let's say I'm going to do a P. I'm going to make it really sort of overlapping. The P is like this. I think I'm going to have the A, the stroke of the A that crosses horizontally be not connected. One of the things I try to avoid is having 3 lines cross. So having this happen here is not a good idea. But having it happen down here, I like to have room. So how do we turn this into something that's more flowery? Well, one thing you can do is actually pretend these are branches of some sort of botanical thing. So here you have, this one's coming up like that, going over here like that. I'll get rid of the black in a second. This here goes here, this goes here. Okay, let's get rid of the black. Okay, so let's say we turn this into something sort of flowery. So there's a little sort of bud kind of a thing coming up here. Here's the thick part of the stem. For some reason, we have a little branching off going over here. I don't know what kind of plant this is, so don't make me crazy. But this could be a bud of a flower at the end of the pea. You know, these delicate lines can sort of fly off. Could actually be quite lovely, maybe too fuzzy. Usually sort of in the big fat part of the line, you can maybe make it more robust. Do some cross-hatching lines there. We'd probably have this be a little bit fatter. And some leafy kind of stuff there. Now the A, we sort of lost the A, so we have to make the A bigger. So maybe this stroke is thinner, ends with maybe a little flowery little bud kind of thing there. Comes down here. Maybe this flies off into something. You know, maybe this is cross-hatched. This line here, the horizontal line, is the strange one. How do we make that work in the floral way? Well, we could have it sort of do this. Like there's a little budlet, we'll call it a budlet, coming off this way. Another one going this way. Oops, yeah, who knows? We could figure out a way to do that. I mean, the thing with monograms and with botany, and you know, there's so many things you can do, and it vaguely looks like a plant, unless you show it to a botanist, in which case they're going to say, absolutely not. You could graft this, and you could do all sorts of stuff, but it's never going to look. It's never going to look like an actual plant. Now, Gothic lettering, they were keen on doing everything under the sun to make, like the Boston Red Sox, their lettering is, for the B, is sort of Gothic. It has this sort of stuff happening. I don't think they have the little cutouts, but they, you know, it looks kind of like that. Well, we can do the same thing with A and a P. The P can have a little cutout thing in the stem here. Can have a triangular cutout there. Can have a little doober there. Another thing that Gothic lettering loved doing is having this sort of three-dimensional sort of look to it, like it's actually carved out of stone or metal or something. So that's sort of what they do. So how do we, if we're going to do all of this kind of crazy stuff, how are we going to make the A and the P overlap? And how are we going to make it look good? Now, A's in Gothic lettering, you can sort of fatten up the top, sort of like this, because sometimes little points are a problem with we designers. But again, the A and the P, how are they going to overlap? Sometimes I overlap them so you see one letter first. You read from top to bottom or from left to right. This is sort of similar to one I just did. I don't know. What do you think? Try another one. So this is what I do sometimes on the iPad, sometimes I do it on a piece of paper. I just try to figure out ways to make the A and the P work. Now, you can also make an A that looks like this, a lowercase a. That's kind of cool. So let's say we do that. Let's start over. Here's essentially, I'm going to make this very light so you can just kind of see it. And then I'm going to show you how we can sort of screw it up a little bit. So here we have an A and a P, and if it was like this, if it was a D and a P, we'd be all set, because it's sort of symmetrical. Kind of fun. But it's an A. It's not a D, it's an A. So how do we fix that? Well, the A doesn't have to do that. It could do that. Maybe that's all you need to do. So, does it still look like an A? Kinda. Looks a little bit more like a D, so let's have this one go a little bit more like that. So can we do the same thing with the P? Can make a little serif up at the top like this. Here's our P. Now can I have this? Can I have the P do this? Is that going to look like a P? Kind of. Kind of looks like a P. I do like to play with symmetry. I love playing with two horizontal lines, or parallel lines rather, not horizontal. There's a way to build a monogram where the elements, there's elements that will fit on these lines somehow. So an A, and P. Let's do the P up here. Look at that. Kind of looks like a P and an A. Let's make it obvious that they're different. There's the P, and there's the A. It's kind of cool. And then to overlap them, we have the P going in front of that, over the A, under the A, over the A, and under the A again. Let's just make this a little bit back to the blue. Over, under, over, 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 under, over. Anyway, that's kind of neat. I mean, it looks like an A and a P, kind of. You know, monograms are meant to be, it's kind of a puzzle. In fact, they were often called ciphers. If you write all the letters of your name, let's say your name was Pierre, let's pretend you were stuck with that name. You know, there would be a big P usually, and the P, to make it look like it's in the center, you know, you might have to figure out how to do that. And then you have an I. Well, an I on top of a P is going to just be on top, but usually they're smaller. The second letter is smaller. I. It's my I. Then an E. And then an R. And it's when you have all these things made of different kinds of line weight and different, you know, one might be a black letter, one might be a white letter with black borders, one might be crosshatched. Then it turns into a nightmare. But sometimes they're readable after a fashion. So anyway, go back to A and P. A, P. No, A, P. Okay, what can I do with this idea? There's the idea again. So I've got this big round thing here. I have another big one here. So again, how do I balance it with the other stuff? A, P. This is sort of like I had done before, except it's sort of like a squished four-leaf clover. I don't know how I ever got that in my little head. A. Again, sometimes showing them in two colors. There's the A. So it's this kind of an A, right? Except I've just made that part a little bit bigger. Then the P is this kind of a P, except I've enlarged so that's kind of neat. Now can we straighten this out so it's vertical rather than slanted? Yes, we can do that somehow. There. Oops, except you went off the page. Try that again. So anyway, there's so many, I love designing monograms because there's so many different ways you can do really, really fun stuff. Sometimes it's a challenge. I had one client that asked me to do a printed I and a printed S, and they wanted them to overlap. Well, I said it's going to look like a dollar sign. They said, okay, do it anyway. And I did it anyway. It looks like a dollar sign. And I said, yeah, I know, I told you that. I did come up with an idea that the IS could fit in a hexagon. So we have the I, and all I did was tilt one way and one the other way. So this was the I, right? And the S went like this, somehow. I kind of forget how it... There, looked like that. So there's the S, sort of tilting back, and then there's the I tilting the other way. And they said it looks like Superman. And I said, well, shall I try another thing? They didn't want it in script. An I and an S. That could have worked. Maybe. I's are tough. I's are a really hard letter to do things with. But anyway, back to the A and P, there's so many different fun ways to do it. And I kind of like the first one I did. I like the idea also of, can you make a monogram that's made with just one line? So A, P. There's something really elegant about that. And it's also relatively symmetrical. And you can make it even more symmetrical if you made the A look like this. Oops. If you did that, and this curve out like that, out and then down, rather than straight down. I guess that doesn't work. You'd have to do this. Who knows? Anyway, A and P. Add to shopping cart. Write your answers below. Thank you very much.